Welcome back to the Common Denominator. I'm your host, Ilana Rachel Daniel. This past Saturday on Shabbat, June 8th, 2024, in a joint operation coordinated with multiple branches of Israel's defense forces, including the military, Yamam, the elite counter-terrorism unit of the police force, the Air Force, and intelligence units, those troops accomplished an extraordinary feat and succeeded in rescuing 4 Israeli hostages to bring them home physically unharmed in an achievement of truly legendary status. What was accomplished, as Avi Issacharoff, a co-creator of the Israeli TV series Fauda, noted, this was beyond belief. And oh, it was. It's challenging not to attach a string of superlatives to the chain of events, but the details, stripped down to their bare facts, is all that's needed to provide the crystal clear picture of heroism and courage that require no additional dressing. We wish to showcase their heroism here. After weeks of painstaking planning, drills, and tracking of intelligence, the operation was approved by the political tier and initially named Summer Seeds. They waited for the moment to act. That Saturday, in the bright light of day, special forces dressed up as Gazans, speaking with both local dialect and accent, one simple factor in a continuous line of hair-breadth choices and tasks that would result in only one of 2 outcomes: success or death. At around 10:45 a.m., aircraft and ground surveillance observed by Shin Bet Director Ronen Bar, IDF Chief Herzi Halevi, and the IDF's Southern Command Chief in Beersheba determined that there were no suspicious movements from the alleyways and areas around 2 buildings in question. Those buildings, 3 to 4 stories high, sat 200 meters apart and held 4 Israeli hostages in civilian homes under armed guard. Elite units made their way towards the locations where the kidnapped were being held, which, usual to Hamas's strategy of using human beings as shields, lay in the heart of Nuseirat, a bustling, heavily populated area next to a food market which has been operational throughout the war, and a shopping mall. Noah Argamani was held in one building, and the 3 male hostages, Almog Meirjan, Andrei Kozlov, and Shlomo Ziv, were held in the other. All 4 of them kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival on October 7th, 245 days before. At 11 a.m., officers from Shin Bet and the Israel Police Yamam unit were given the order to move ahead, and they left the 2 trucks from which they had entered the area and stormed the buildings. Coordination had to be seamless, and retrieval of the hostages had to happen parallel to one another, for the fear that Hamas would murder the hostages once they understood a rescue operation was underway, as indeed Hamas attempted to do once it was revealed. The troops that entered first into the building where Argamani was held were able to eliminate the guards and retrieve her relatively smoothly. However, in the second building, troops encountered fiercer resistance. Yamam commander Arnon Zmora was critically injured by close-range fire. After eliminating the terrorist guards, his troops tried hard to save his life as they left with the hostages. At 11:15 a.m., the eagerly awaited message was heard. The diamonds are in our hands. The hostages had been secured. During the delay of that gun battle, armed Hamas terrorists surrounded the building. As the troops carrying the 3 hostages and a wounded Arnon attempted to drive away from the crowded Nuseirat market, they came under heavy fire by AK-47 rifles, PK machine guns, and RPGs, with Hamas flooding in from alleys and streets in all directions. The truck was stuck. At 11:25, the 7th Armored Brigade and fighters from the paratroopers Kfir and Givati brigades, who were stationed nearby, provided cover fire. They were deployed on foot, in tanks, and Namer APCs to aid the hostages and their rescuers to safely exit the neighborhood. Air Force fighter jets and helicopters also launched attacks on the terrorists and their infrastructure to clear the area and ensure a safe exit. Navy ships were also involved. The Southern Command authorized IAF helicopters to land in the Strip, covered by fire from fighter jets. At 11:50, paratroopers loaded the hostages and last of the rescuers into helicopters, which flew them straight to Tel HaShomer Hospital. Tel HaShomer is where each of the rescued hostages has been taken to first for examinations after the release from captivity, and they were notified and ready in advance of the operation. Our soldiers tried continuously to revive Arnon Zamora in the air. However, tragically, he was pronounced dead of his injuries upon reaching the hospital, and the operation was renamed Operation Arnon in his honor. At 1:33 in the afternoon, the successful mission was announced to the Israeli public, and rejoicing reverberated throughout the country. Announcements were made on beaches, prompting singing and dancing and rejoicing. Secular Jews rushed to put up notices and announce to Shabbat observant Jews of the tremendous news. People across the nation hugged and cried and thanked God and our unparalleled heroes for one of the greatest examples of the Jewish nation's love of life that has ever been seen by the world. It is this that has sent the enemies of civilization howling, because there is nothing that they can say, and there is nothing that they can do to diminish the display of our singular drive for life. Life, for the sake of life. This is no Hollywood creation. This is our reality. Raw and dangerous, and spectacularly terrifying and beautiful all at once. Arnon Zamora left behind him a nation who thanks him, praises him, eulogizes him, and mourns him as if he were a brother from our own home. While a hero to us, Arnon was a cherished husband to Michal and beloved father to their 2 young boys. However heroic the actions that led to his death, we carry their personal loss of Arnon the father, Arnon the husband. Their story is their private one, all while exemplifying the story of our collective people. May God comfort them among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. May Michal and Noam and Itai, and this nation in its whole, know no more suffering. Yamam is Israel's national counterterrorism unit, and I've had the great pleasure to meet just a few of these heroes personally. The Yamam specialize in hostage rescue and offense takeover raids against terrorist targets in civilian areas. Besides military and counterterrorism duties, they also perform tactical and undercover police work. Yamam was established in 1974 after the Ma'alot massacre. In that event, a rescue operation by the Sayeret Matkal, commando unit of the IDF, failed, and it resulted in the murder of 21 school children before the terrorists were killed. Many of you have heard of Noah Argamani's mother, who's on her last days dying of stage 4 brain cancer, her dying wish to see her daughter one last time. We're deeply grateful Noah returned to her mother in her last moments. To complicate the joy further is the unbelievable tragedy of young Almog Meir John's father, Yossi Meir. Yossi was devastated by Almog's kidnapping. He all but locked himself alone in his home, glued to the news, eating and sleeping little. He lost over 20 kilos throughout the ordeal, and his family were deeply worried for him. When his sibling came running on Shabbat to give him the incredible news of Almog's rescue, Yossi was found dead, having died of heartache in the night. No words are accessible to contribute to this utterly shattering turn of events. If you are watching this, you will see some of the footage from Almog's return to his large group of loyal friends. We witness a young man so clearly and widely loved, a sweetness and joy of being that makes you want to hug him and also hang out and buy him a beer. May he and all the hostages be returned to Israel and to full healing of body, mind, and soul. A note of significance: these 3 men were not on any hostage negotiation list. Their hope for return was minimal, and their rescue snatched them from the depths of a hell without escape. Immediately after the operation, Gazan sources claimed that humanitarian aid vehicles and the American-built pier were used in the mission. Not surprisingly, no evidence has been provided to support those claims. Not that the court of public opinion is swayed by evidence. All the same, while the U.S. did assist Israel to gather necessary intelligence used in the operation, The pier was not used. We won't waste too much time today on the inverse narrative we've come to know and be appalled by daily. In this version, we'll note that no small amount of people capable of twisting even this extraordinarily heroic event, one they've similarly watched and cheered in infinite movies out of Hollywood. Kenneth Roth is a fun example. World-renowned lawyer, activist, and deeply devoted denouncer of Israel, claimed perfidy might be implicated here because, wait for it, some of the Israeli forces were wearing civilian clothes during their initial arrival. Combatants at war have a duty to distinguish themselves from civilians, he said. That's what uniforms are for. It's key to protecting civilians. Did Israeli forces during the hostage rescue operation commit the war crime of perfidy by pretending to be civilians, Ken wrote? A primary piece of Hamas's strategy is to blur the line between the military and the civilians. If you've ever seen a single video, Hollywood, AI, or real humans out of Gaza, pray tell, how many uniforms have you counted? However, the law of armed conflict does not require soldiers to always wear uniforms. Illegal acts of perfidy are committed when there is intent to kill or capture. As the intent wasn't to engage in hostilities, but rather to rescue hostages, perfidy doesn't apply here. Since Ken won't say it, kidnapping Israeli civilians in the first place is a war crime. So is holding them in civilian homes. So is deliberately using a crowded population as cover. The cynical use of human shields has been and continues to be Hamas's primary tool of weaponry. Those armchair pundits chilling in living rooms, weighing in on the size of bombs Israel does or doesn't use on a target, would do well to acknowledge Hamas's weapon of choice and human beings of flesh and blood. Toying with numbers to create false equivalents is Hamas's second most successful war tool. And it's the one used against you, dear audience, to manipulate and to twist, to remove context and reality, and to deliver the lie that intention has no bearing here. The IDF has confirmed another inconvenient truth about the indistinguishable nature of Hamas and Gazan civilians. The 3 male hostages were held in the private home of Abdallah al-Jamal. His father, Dr. Ahmed al-Jamal, was a prominent doctor in the area, and both were killed in the operation. Al-Jamal was an ex-Hamas spokesman and also a news contributor for Al Jazeera and the Palestinian Chronicles. And here he was sitting on the biggest scoop of the year. I would say this: if Israel Defense Forces conducted themselves with even a fraction of what they're accused of, I myself, along with the vast majority of 9 million Israeli citizens and Jews worldwide, would roar against the sullying of the unique qualities that devote us to life. Luckily for us, however, not only are crimes not committed, the opposite is true, and the IDF, with a rare exception, takes extraordinary strides to preserve life. Again, if for nothing more than to work against Hamas's war strategy by destroying it. This fact is on the record and accessible for all the world to observe and to learn from. What that they did. While I and so many other Israelis are disillusioned by the choices of our leadership, we stand behind our army, heart and soul, for they are we, and we are they. They fight with our homes in sight, with our children hiding in shelters, under the blast of some 20,000 missiles and rockets that have been launched at us from Iran, Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon, and Gaza since October 7th. We are crystal clear what drives our defense. There is no partisanship to our love of life. There are endless details, moments, graces of God in this operation that was the most complex in Israel's history. But above all else, there was bravery. There was bravery of the kind legends are made. The soldiers acted in an unparalleled coordination and strategic, professional, and courageous badassery that Israel nor any other nation has achieved since the epic rescue of 102 hostages at Entebbe Airport in 1976. No less of it can be said. These are the moments that inspire films, books, and great men and women to draw on that fortitude to themselves act on behalf of people in need. We witness the peak of heights that man might achieve, at best only once in a lifetime, but most of us never do. We receive it hand to heart, and we are all raised up by it. It is my belief that what brings a person to a life of joy is the act of choice. Whatever are the options with which we are presented, it is this act of self-determination that brings one the satisfaction of living. What we saw in Arnon and every one of those involved in the rescue is an emboldened act of choice. The choice to defend life brings honor to it. To choose life is to amplify it and nourish it. We can't expect to see this happen every Shabbat, if only, but it was a moment we thank God for. There would be no achievement without him. We thank the men who do great things and the web of support built piece by endless piece by the women who love them. We pray with all our might that this joy might be increased 116-fold with the return of all our brothers and sisters from captivity. I would say that this has been the hardest year of our lives, and for this moment of grace we are deeply grateful, for it's renewed not the fuel of politicians, nor the virulent hate of the masses, but the will of the people to rise above them. I am reminded of an account from one of the heroes of the Entebbe raid, Shiki, last name Shani. He said upon his return home from the mission, I'll quote, "My father was sitting in the middle of the room, and my father lost his family in the Holocaust. I looked at him, although I was exhausted and tired. I looked at him and said, we're now involved in saving Jews, which nobody did when he needed it." For all our divisions, there are ties that forever bind us, a collective memory of who we are and where we came from. It cannot be taken away. This is recorded on the eve of Shavuot, the day we receive the Torah, and I'm reminded of the Pirkei Avot that both while we are not obligated to finish the job of fixing ourselves in the world, neither are we dismissed from the obligation of trying with all our might to do so. I bless us to hear the still small voice that is always speaking from within, the one guiding us to become better at every moment we have. I'm Ilana Rachel Daniel, and this is the Common Denominator.